I am aggressive.
Be aggressive. Be aggressive.
Oops.
And we were talking about my dad.
How is Daddy Keating?
Oh, he's lovely. I'm actually going to a concert with him on
Ooh,
Sunday.
what are you seeing?
Aaron Lewis.
Oh, he's from Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
He is
Worthington.
extremely conservative.
When I first moved here, my hubby would take me around driving in the woods, and we would drive by the house, and it was like, oh, Aaron Lewis used to live here.
So I need my first tattoo this year. I made myself a promise, and maybe I should get a Wicked Wanderings tattoo instead. Or no,
Because that would jinx.
Ooh, we could make it fun. How many subscribers do we need for Hannah to get a Wicked Wanderer?
Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jess.
And I'm Hannah.
Join us as we delve into true crime, paranormal encounters, and all things spooky.
So grab your flashlight and get ready to wander into the darkness with us.
This is Wicked Wanderings. So, hello, wanderers.
Hello, wanderers.
Hello,
Hannah
wanderers.
and Rob, we have a special episode tonight.
I'm so excited.
And we have been trying to get Courtney on here forever to tell us about her experiences because she's been to a lot of spooky places.
She's an amazing photographer. She's a brilliant behavior analyst. Taught me everything I know. Get emotional. She's brilliant, everybody. Welcome.
And she's
Courtney!
hilarious. So here is Courtney.
Yay!
Thank you. I'm going to go hide now.
So you have some tales for us.
Okay. Well, so as Hannah mentioned, I take photos. I've always loved photography since I was a little girl. My dad got me my first camera when I was really little. Yes, Hannah.
I have a question.
Yes, okay.
Do you have photos of what you're going to talk about?
I do not, unfortunately.
Okay, because we could totally post them. That's okay.
So the place that I had chose to talk about today was from before I had actually started taking photos of abandoned buildings, which is something I definitely started a little bit, I would say, later on, once I was an adult and my dad couldn't ground me, essentially. A lot of taking photos in abandoned buildings is breaking and entering. Which, sorry if you're listening, Dad, you're gonna hear a lot.
Can you
of things
tell
don't
us
wanna
where
hear
you're
about.
going? That I'm so jelly about.
Yes, in September I'm going to the Trans Allegheny Asylum.
Oh, so jealous.
Is that in West Virginia?
It is in West Virginia.
And isn't it like on 666 acres or something like that?
Why, yes, it is, Rob. And with also 13 buildings.
Wow.
13 doesn't seem like that many, actually.
13's a number like that. Like 7 is God's number. 13's
An unlucky
Satan.
number.
not God's number, I guess.
Satan and Taylor Swift.
So you're going to Trans Allegheny?
Yes.
In West Virginia.
Yes.
On 666 acres.
Yes, in September.
With 13 buildings.
It was a callback we were trying to kill off.
So
I'm glad you know your radio terms.
I make that about my jokes in regular life.
anyways, moving on. I know nothing about this place.
Yeah, so I grew up in North Adams, Mass. And the first place that really kind of caught my attention as a young kid about abandoned places was the Houghton Mansion, which it wasn't actually abandoned at that time. The Freemasons had purchased it. But it's kind of got a cool story, and a lot of people have talked about the ghost stories that happen at it. And actually, my first dance that I had a date to a long time ago at this point now.
Please.
Yes. It was at that place. And so they did a tour too when we were there. And we actually got to see kind of all of the inside of the house. The Freemasons did do some work on the building, so it wasn't all original. They had the brick back half, I believe, is what they had added for their meeting rooms, very cryptically. And I do think now it's currently empty, actually, which is kind of
Really?
sad. Yeah.
So the Masons aren't there anymore.
No, I want to say it was like 2017 maybe that they sold it.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense because how I found out and I messaged you because I knew you grew up in North Adams was because I saw an old original episode of Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans was there.
Seen that?
Yes, and I was like North Adams. I was like Courtney, and then yes, I didn't know. Then he interviewed with the Freemason, so I thought they still owned it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I want to say his episode was from like 2015, I think.
It older than that.
It was back. It was back there. But North Adams is good for, Mount Greylock, as Rob knows.
Yeah, the highest.
The hill.
Come on.
Another callback for us.
It's the highest mountain in Massachusetts, or the highest point.
But also for the Hoosac Tunnel, which I could probably talk about for a light year, so that would have to be a totally separate episode. But also for the Houghton Mansion, which is apparently one of the top 5 most haunted places, according to some places on the internet, in Massachusetts, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't realize that until I was looking into it a little bit.
Do you remember what the other ones were? Just like curiosity.
The Hoosac Tunnel was one of them. So the Hoosac Tunnel, at the Bloody Pit. So it definitely collapsed in as they were building it at a certain point, and that's why it got the name the Bloody Pit. It killed a lot of people who were working on it.
Right. Okay. Yep.
So that's said to be haunted as well. And I will admit something here that I have not ever admitted out loud for the very first time.
On Wicked Wanderings, everybody.
In high school, one of my teachers that I was a TA for was starting a ghost hunting after school program. And that's when after school programs were not cool. People who went to those were not fun. And she said to me, Courtney, I'll give you a good grade if you come to be the last person so we can actually have this group. So I was part of the ghost hunting group
That's cool.
in high school.
That's awesome.
And the
That's
Hoosac
really
Tunnel
cool.
was on the list, actually. So,
That's really cool.
yes.
That is amazing.
Can I raise my hand?
Yeah, go
it was
ahead.
2008 that Zach was there.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah.
That was a
Season-
year before me.
Season 1, episode 2, in case you were wondering.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Season
he
1,
did
episode
the
2.
Bobby Mack.
Mackey's place first.
Anyway, side note.
Interesting.
So on this ghost, your after school program, you went to this place?
No, so we
Oh.
didn't go to this place, but we did go to the Hoosac Tunnel at one point at one of the entrances that's located in North Adams, because there's another entrance located in Florida, Mass. There's a really cute sign when you're going up the mountain. It's a snowman that says, "Welcome to Florida." Ironically.
Oh, that's cute.
It is cute. People take, tacky pictures in front of it when they're visiting. But on the North Adams side, we had gone in and done some of the, amateur level
So
ghost
there's no
hunting things.
train that's going through that anymore.
Wrong. So I didn't
A
think so
ghost train.
either, but I had to do a photography project my senior year also for art class, and I had decided to do it. You had to make like a book about something, and I always kind of liked history of obviously creepy things. I should have seen this coming a long time before it actually happened. And I was doing it on the Hoosac Tunnel, and my friend Danielle and I, shout out Danielle,
Hi, Danielle.
one of my oldest friends from high school. And I had asked her, would you come with me to take these photos of the Hoosac Tunnel? It'll be fun. And Danielle went with me reluctantly. And I was getting pictures of her on the tracks, and we were standing right at the entrance of the tunnel, which it's like tracks, and then the tunnel is right outside. I mean, you've got like, a foot and a half on either side. You're not talking a lot of space.
So it's a tight fit.
And all of a sudden, there's this smoke coming out of the tunnel, and I'm like, "Oh, look it's cold in there. It's steamy." And all of a sudden, we're both like, "Shit!" And we're like pressed against the walls of this like rock as the train comes shooting out of the tunnel.
Oh my
and
God.
she's just like, "Take pictures." And so somewhere on a hard drive, somewhere, I have photos that my dad. It got me an A on the project, but my dad was like, "How did you get those?" And we need to talk again about safety.
Yeah.
I didn't
Wow.
think trains was something we had to warn you about, but apparently trains is.
So it's interesting because that's actually one of the first things I thought of when I saw the Ghost Adventures episode, because Zach walks straight in there. I'm like, oh my God, are these trains live? Or tracks live, I guess I would say.
They are, but they don't have like the same so I live in Palmer, and obviously there's a lot of trains that come in and out of there all the time. Every night you can hear trains coming in and out of Palmer. It's not quite like that, but that track was still active at least in 2012. I would imagine it still is to some degree.
He must have had to check because why? Well, it's Zach Bagans, so who knows? But I mean, crazy.
Is he a celebrity crush for you?
I have.
She said his name like 6 times. And she gets this look about her when she says it. Yeah.
Do you want
why
me?
I'm asking.
He's a weirdo, but I have a total crush on Zach Bagans. Yes, if I ever saw him in real life, I'd probably like. The only reason I want to go to Vegas is to go to his like haunted attractions.
Do you want me to try to see if I can get him on the podcast?
If you can get Zach Bagans, I probably will not talk the whole time. 'Cause I'll be.
And I'm inviting myself.
Yeah, I'll reach out to my my contact in the UK that said Anytime you want to get a celebrity on your podcast, let me know because I know all the agents.
So, the Houghton Mansion, otherwise, no, it's only known as the Houghton Mansion. The Houghton Mansion was owned by the first mayor of North Adams, so Albert Charles Houghton. And he had it built. It was kind of like a status symbol of like how much he how wealthy he was, how powerful he was. And they said at one point it was one of like the top 3 most like wealthy and status driven houses in North Adams. There are a lot of really beautiful like Victorian style houses. It's located on Church Street, which is a lot of very older homes. And it certainly does still stick out even though. Yes, Hannah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A sincere expression of gratitude to our esteemed patrons,
Ashley and Karen,
Kate and Stephanie,
Amber and Courtney,
Chelsea and Heather,
Lynn and Margie,
Mark and Jake, for their generous monthly contributions. Their support fuels the engine of our investigative endeavors here at Wicked Wanderings.
You too can become a valued patron and unlock a realm of exclusive content by supporting our mission for as little as $3 a month. Your contribution sustains our commitment to delivering high-quality content.
Visit wickedwanderingspodcast.com and click on the support tab to join the ranks of our dedicated patrons. Your investment not only keeps our podcast thriving, but also ensures that you are at the forefront of our intriguing discoveries with bonus content only available for those patron subscribers.
Thank you for considering this opportunity to deepen your engagement with Wicked Wanderings. Your support is paramount in enabling us to continue our journey into the realms of mystery and true crime. And now, back to the shit show. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I feel that the status of North Adams has changed so much over the years because I feel like there was a lot of wealth for North Adams. Yeah. And then when the factories and everything shut down, then there was a lot of poverty in North Adams.
Absolutely.
Correct. Okay.
I think growing up in North Adams, even 30 years ago, it was a lot different than it is now. A lot of things there are just kind of dying off. Businesses are dying off. People are leaving. I think every time a lot of my family still lives there. Every time I go back, people are like, well, why did you leave? Why did you move out? There was no job opportunities out there. And especially in my line of work, being so new, there's really like, unless you want to work at the schools, which horrifies me because I would know all of the people who work there and all the people whose kids I was working with, which was not ideal. But it absolutely did change over time. And it still does have a lot of draws that I think people of a certain aesthetic like to go to, like Mass Mocha. Yeah. The Norman Rockwell Museum is in the Berkshires. The Berkshires has a lot of stuff.
Great breweries in the Berkshires.
They do.
Too.
They have great breweries.
Bright Ideas, one of my favorites.
I had to, in preparation for this episode, look up something that I could say, and I quote, because it's one of my favorite things that Hannah says. And I quote the Williams record. For $80 a night, as long as you followed 3 rules, no alcohol, no drugs, and no Ouija boards, was kind of what the Masons had said about staying there.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting. But before I get ahead of myself, so Albert, the owner of the home, he lived there with his family. He had several children, but one died early on as a child, and then several of them had already grown up and had their own families. But him and his daughter Mary were unfortunately killed around the same time. So in 1914, there was a car accident in Vermont. They were on their way to Bennington, Vermont, so they were going up through Pownell, and he had just bought his first brand new car ever. And I will have to literally read what it is because I had never heard of it until I looked it up. It was a Pierce Arrow touring car that seated 7.
Damn.
Yeah. So obviously a little
minivan of his time.
Yes. And John Witters, who was his longtime servant, but had just recently been trained on how to drive. Thinking back how long ago that was. Yeah. He was the one who was at the wheel the day of the accident. Ooh. So there's many different stories actually, if you're looking into it, that you'll actually see. So the first one that I had come across was that, something had happened and the car just rolled down a hill. I was like, that seems a little bit too vague for me. But when I looked into it farther, it sounds like there was an obstacle on the side of the road. John tried to kind of, veer around it and had either overshot or something had happened and the road caved. And so they did fall down an embankment, and it rolled over 3 full times and landed back right side up. His daughter Mary was ejected from the car. They also had a family friend who was a doctor, as well as his wife and their child. And I believe the wife passed away as well. So Albert did live through the accident, and Mary died en route to the hospital. So it was not immediate. She did die. I think it was closer to like 3 p.m. and the accident was about 9:30 in the morning at North Adams Hospital, they had said. But Albert died at home about 9 or 10 days later. And some people were actually saying that he died of a broken heart. So he had minor injuries, but at home, that's kind of all that you can really get. I tried to dig further into it, and it's really just, suspected a broken heart at the loss of his daughter, who at that time was his caretaker. So she was really kind of like, he was a diehard businessman. So he was the mayor, the first mayor of North Adams, but then he had, finished up his time as the mayor. I think it was like a 2-year term that he had served. And then he went back into business because he was very prominent in the factories and things that Hannah had talked about too. So Albert and John both had minor injuries. And so Albert had died 9 or 10 days later, but John actually was found dead the next morning. He had committed suicide on the Houghton property. He was overcome with guilt at the fact that, Mary had died, and he had been a longtime friend and servant of them. So he was found dead in the horse area with a horse pistol.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. So a lot of times people, when they're talking about the Houghton Mansion, I think sometimes they connect the Houghton Mansion and the Hoosac Tunnel I was seeing, and I was like, no, I can't put these two together. They have to be separate. But I kind of wanted to see, like, the history really isn't that much that's there, what you can find from so long ago. But really what people talk about is all the experiences that they had when the Freemasons had owned the building. So some of the different things that people were reporting were doors slamming and papers rustling. And that was in the second floor records room, which I believe was part of the original house, from what I looked at. And then there was one snowy night that the Freemasons had heard downstairs the side door open, and they heard the sounds of someone like stomping their boots out. It was like 2 feet of snow, and they were all snowed in. And then they heard the sound of the door closing. And when they went, there was no boot tracks. There was no snow inside. And it was like one of those doors they had said in their account that was like,
you couldn't open.
You couldn't open the door without the sound of it opening and then closing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I thought was super interesting. And then as I was digging, I was like, okay, but like, which spirit do people believe was actually there?
Yeah.
And it sounds like people had reported different things from Mary, Albert, and John. So people had felt like they could hear their voices in different places. I know the basement was a really big thing. So there was originally a different house on the foundation. And they had tore it down when they were building the Houghton Mansion and put that one right on top, but they used the same foundation. And so even back to the Houghton family when they lived there, they had reported having this like weird, eerie feeling when they were in the basement. And people still, when the Masons had it, said the same thing, which was funny because how would they have known that so long ago the family who lived there also felt the same things? Shadowy figures kind of roaming the hallways. And then one that I actually connected with, and that's why I saved it for last, was that visitors often expressed having a heavy and sad feeling when they entered Mary's old bedroom. And I distinctly only remember very few things about being, 14 years old at a school dance at the Houghton Mansion. One being like, this is so cool, I'm going to go inside. And probably bolting out of my mom's car, disregarding everything she was telling me. But also that when we got the tour and they showed us Mary's bedroom, it was definitely a very somber feeling. And back then, I really don't think that I knew what had happened there. It was kind of one of those houses that you pass all the time and you're like, oh yeah, that's that place. But nobody ever really like talked about kind of what happened there. And I believe the barn was long gone by the time that I had gone there. I think that the barn is gone now. But yeah, the Houghton Mansion.
That's interesting.
Awesome.
You know what? I've been on a couple ghost tours, obviously, and they always tell you first what happened in there and what people have experienced. And I wish they would wait because it's like the power of suggestion and walking in and like, oh, I'm supposed to feeling somber. And so that would be interesting to like have a ghost tour that says, okay, this is where we're in. And,
but something we've talked about is like some of these big name places like the Lizzie Borden house.
Yeah.
Didn't feel a thing.
No,
neither of us did. Have you been there yet?
No.
We should go. Not power suggestion, right? But like, I did not feel a thing. But then I go to that place that you said is right near your boyfriend's house in Rhode Island, the main street.
I have no idea what it's called.
It's right near, but we talked about this. You're like, it's like 2 minutes from his family home.
Oh yeah, I don't know which
The main.
I have no idea.
Something.
The main diner.
No. Anyways, it's close to where your boyfriend's family is, but the overwhelming feeling, I don't know what else. It's very oppressive feeling, and that stays with you for mine stayed with me for at least 24 hours. And I was
Was
like,
that when you guys went to the restaurant?
Yes.
You and Jonathan?
Yeah. Like totally felt it for over 24 hours, and I was so worried I took something home with me.
I think,
but it was just people have said it stays with you for a while.
I think some places, and I think maybe that's part of why I like abandoned buildings, is because sometimes you go to some place that you've read about and that you're like, okay, like when I go to West Virginia, I've read about it, I want to see it. But there's been times where I've gone to old farmhouses. There's one that I can think of off the top of my head in New York, and we called it the Love Letter House because there were just love letters scattered all over the floor that somebody had written. It was across the street from this like beautiful, very like just somber. I mean, like stream that went over rocks, and there was waterfalls. It was very peaceful in the middle of nowhere. The door was just unlocked as if it was waiting for someone to come home. And the pictures I have from there will still give me the same feeling of standing in their kitchen, where it was like when I was standing there, I just was waiting for someone to come home. And it's like, okay, but you're not in your home. And you just get that unexplainable feeling.
Kind of like a longing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And why would I feel that? Because I didn't know anything about the house. I had been driving with friends and we just decided to stop and go in. So it's not like I knew anything about the backstory to create in my head, like, oh, this is how you're going to feel. It was just this building took on that feeling. And I think that's part of the reason why I like photographing those places, because when you're there, you can just kind of feel what's there and put it into your art.
That's awesome.
Because I think some people just want to be scared by places.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But and part of, like, this is kind of going a little off track, but people's energy end up fueling something that's not necessarily there to begin with.
Yeah.
But for me, I just rather like feel what could have been left there.
Yeah.
And like, because they say like stuff can, like feelings and energies can be absorbed in stone and brick and whatever. Like a lot of places aren't built like that anymore, but it's interesting what can be left at places.
Like the residual energy.
Yeah.
What were some of your other experiences that were
at different places?
Yeah, at different places that you've photographed.
I mean, there's been so many different places. I think a lot of times people are hoping or maybe thinking that my experiences are always going to be when I've photographed old state hospitals, old mental asylums. And honestly, those places I don't usually feel anything.
Really?
A lot of times the homes, and I think it's because homes are so personal. So when I'm, photographing someone's abandoned living room, it's like they had chosen the layout of this room. There's a home that was in, I have to think, Pelham, Mass, I believe. It was purchased by a developer and they had to take it down. They wanted to save it, but the foundation was just unsafe. There was never going to be a safe way to develop it. And so we had the opportunity, one of my friends and I, to go and photograph the place and kind of go through. And he was like, we're going to have to get rid of everything that's in it because of its age. So if you want anything, you can take the items. And I remember my dad being like, don't take things from an abandoned house. Like, you don't know. And I'm like, well, you just thank the home as you're leaving. And she had a beautiful library room. It was probably about the size of the room we're in right now. And she was an old school teacher. And so she had desks and books and like notes tucked in the books from like who had purchased them. And a lot of the decor in my apartment is from Barbara's house. And I know it as Barbara's house because that's what her name was.
But you're being respectful to it.
Yeah.
You're respectful.
The feeling of being in someone's personal space, like how they decorate their space, what items they choose that represented them and mean something. Those are always the places that I found that I have more of an experience. And being in Barbara's house, I never felt unwelcomed. I never felt like anything was hostile. It was kind of just like a friend was following you around. Like as you're photographing the shoes in her closet, she's like standing there just kind of like, oh, someone's appreciating them. Or she really loved, I mean, I'm assuming, sorry, Barbara, if you don't, but you had a lot of glass. So I assumed that she really liked glass bottles, which I also really like. I loved pharmacy bottles at the time. It was a big thing for me, but different colored glass. And I think I have like 2 glass pigs now in my collection because I was like, oh, that's so interesting that she had 2 glass pigs. And so I was like, well, I can't just let these go nowhere. So now they're part of who I am and part of my space because I found them and they just gave me a feeling of kind of comfort, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like what you said about it's people's space and how they decide to develop it and it's where they decide to place things. It's a little off kilter, but do you guys know about the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum that's in Boston?
Yeah.
Is that the stolen art one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So my brother John brought me there, and something that's kind of off the beaten path, but it was the original entrance to her home. And she had a lot of Japanese artwork. And this is one thing I love about my brother. He thinks differently than other people, which is very brilliant. But he goes off the beaten path, and he's like, this was the original entrance. This was what she wanted to see when she was entering her home. He's like, so to me, this is what was important to her in her lifetime. He's like, and then just looking at it, I had a total different perspective. Everyone else, it's just a blocked door and you go down this hallway. But to John was like, this was her entrance. This is what she loved. She loved all this Japanese artwork. And I was like, wow. So it's thinking about that, like, this is what meant something to her. She loved the glass. She liked her books.
Yeah. You could figure out more about people there. And I actually think, form that connection to be able to, if they were in that space, to be able to be receptive to them.
Yeah.
Because if you think about, I've been in state schools, I've been in state hospitals, but that is not where those people were represented as who they are. That was where those people went through torment and, not because people intended to, but it was what they thought they were doing was best at the time. That's not who those people were. That was them at some very rough points of their life. They didn't get to choose what their environment looked like. They didn't get to choose what happened to them. They had no say at all in that moment. So it would make sense that person probably wasn't there. I mean, maybe there are some people who are, trapped there, but I feel like you would much rather be in a space that you curated perfectly for yourself. Exactly. It's very personal to be in somebody's home. That's why people don't just invite random people over. So being able to be that close to someone, I feel like the homes were always kind of the place where I have more of the kind of haunting effect, I would say.
How'd you get into all of this?
That's a good question. I mean, I always loved photography. And I think I always just had a weird fixation with history in an abandoned context. Obviously, I have a strong inclination towards mental health and things like that. And that was always there. But when I moved to Palmer, I became really quickly obsessed with Beltertown State School, which is very near and dear to my heart. And I remember reading all about it and reading all the books and different people's accounts. There's a lot of really lovely books that people have written about all sorts of things there. And I wanted to see it. And I had gotten my first camera maybe 2 months before, and I really wanted to see it. And I did not know that it was illegal to be on the property. So I will say, shout out, did not know.
Breaking and entering?
I did not go into the buildings.
Okay.
I was very respectful. I was just walking the property, and I didn't get caught, which is funny because now if you're to go there, you will absolutely be arrested. We work closely with the police department as part of our nonprofit, and you will absolutely be arrested. There's a developer who's involved, so they're trying to save the buildings. But back then, there was so many more buildings that were there, and I just kept photographing them. And there were so many of these people that I had looked up to as abandoned photographers that it was kind of like, oh, I would never do it, but I'm interested in their photos. And I found myself, shortly after the Beltertown experience, I had signed up for a workshop. I really got out of my comfort zone. And I was like, oh, I don't know these people, but they're putting on this workshop. It was in Holyoke at the Victory Theater. And I was like, oh, that would be so cool to be allowed into an abandoned place. I was really trying to please my dad and not break into places. I was like, if I can pay to go in, then it doesn't count, right?
Yeah.
He was still not thrilled about that. He was still concerned about the safety aspect. But I ended up going there, and I still go to Dave and Mike's workshops today. Little did I realize that everybody who does abandoned photography usually uses like a screen name or an alias to put their photos under. And when I was standing there with the two people who run the workshops, they had told me their Instagram handles, like, oh, we've never seen you before. They're very, very welcoming of everybody. And they were two of the people that I had looked up to the most. So it was super cool for me to be able to be there with them and take photos and get feedback. Mike, he used a Canon too, just like I did, and he gave me a lot of feedback on how to use my camera in the early days. So that's kind of where it all went from there. I kept going to their workshops and then meeting people who had the same interests as me. And then that's where a lot of the bad decision making of breaking into places I probably shouldn't have been, which I do not do anymore. I do all of my photography legally now because too much to lose and adult responsibility.
So you mentioned a nonprofit.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Do you want to? Or?
Yeah. So a friend, Kate, and I, we started the Beltertown State School Friends Association. And Kate works in special education. I obviously work in special education. And we really wanted to find a way to preserve mental health history and get it to be, a museum was kind of our big end goal. And I believe we were at one of her book events. She's an author. She writes a lot about abandoned places, specifically in the mental health field. Her books are great. Shout out. You should definitely check them out. We'll put the link in the show notes. But
she's a natural.
We were just talking one time at one of her book events. I would go with her and like help her, manage like signing and checking people out at events. And we were like, wouldn't it be so cool if we could do this? Something she had thought about for a long time. And we just kept kind of pushing it forward. And then COVID happened. So a lot of it was kind of stunted, but there is a developer involved. And so we're hoping to be able to get a physical space at Beltertown State School for a museum dedicated to remembering the people who, were there and unfortunately not treated the right way. But a lot of people have learned and made their career based on things that we learned back then. There's a lot of obstacles. A lot of people have their own feelings about it, obviously, about whether or not we should glorify something that happened there. It's certainly not about that. It's definitely about raising awareness and making sure that people always are moving forward and that they're not doing things like restraining people face down. We did that back then. There's a reason we don't do that. We need to take that history and embrace it, the good, bad, the ugly, and learn from it. Yeah. Otherwise, those people died for nothing.
Right. Because if we forget it, we don't learn from it.
Exactly. And those people were important. There's a really good book written by Dr. Howard Shane. Unsilenced, I believe is the title. Read it in like 3 hours on an advanced copy. It's about Beltertown and his experience there and how he kind of got his whole career jump started.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. Thanks for sharing our stories. And anytime you want to invite me and Hannah.
Absolutely. I still owe you guys pictures. I have about 1 million pictures in my Lightroom that have not been edited of pretty much anywhere you can ask.
Really?
My toxic trait is that I take all these photos in an effort to never forget things and then you don't do anything with them. Yeah. I leave them on SD cards and I just keep buying more SD cards.
So have you ever caught anything on film?
No.
Really? Interesting.
No. I feel like for the types of places I normally do photography, I don't think anybody would want to show themselves there. If you think about those people who were there, why would they want to be like photographed in the place that all those horrible things happened? Some of those places are filled with some really humbling things when you're in there. There's a place, so Tewksbury State Hospital is still active. If you're listening and you're thinking about going there, don't go there. It's still active. There are still patients there. Respect them, please. But they have doors that are wooden where there are actually claw marks of the patients in the doors. Just ground into every door of the seclusion rooms where they were trying to get out.
My heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's real. It's a lot of people like it for the lore and for the, the clout of it. But there were real people there. Yeah. There are really bad things that happen there. So it's a lot of kind of like reminding yourself when you're there. Like sometimes you're taking the photo and you're like, oh, that looks great. And then you're like, wow, somebody's life was in there.
I think that's why not every ghost show do I necessarily like.
Yeah.
Because that's why I liked Kindred Spirits with Amy Bruni, because she tried to actually help spirits if they were there and find out the actual history and like what can we do to help you. Because I feel like some shows,
like your boyfriend,
I love Zach Bagans, but he's always like, what do you want? How can we help you? And then he just leaves them. Like, and they say they need help, and then they just leave them.
Well, then he gets confrontational too.
He can get confrontational. So I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm just
perfect for her.
Just to help me understand. Anyways, I have to say though, because this was a couple comments back, so I apologize. I just didn't want to cut anyone off. But when you were talking about being in a place where you made it your own, I think that's why Lisbeth is not at the Lizzie Borden house.
Why would she be?
Right.
When I was listening to your guys' episode, I was like, why would she be there?
Why would she be there?
Mm-mm. That did not seem like a home that was fit for her. It was not a place she was happy.
Maplehurst. Like,
right.
Why not? Would you want to hang out with a bunch
probably
of...
getting the last laugh, too, thinking people are paying money to go there.
Like, little fuckers.
One last gimmick.
Yeah, exactly.
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
so, one more thing. Did you talk about or hear anything about the wall for the house that was built kind of into the road? How it was made from, like, the rock from the tunnel?
Yes, I don't know very much about it, but I do. It's funny because whenever I'm thinking about that house, I'm wondering if I can actually pull up a photo of it. Ooh, wow, that is loud. The rock. So when you're coming, Church Street goes this way. And then, the house is kind of on the right-hand side if you're going towards the center of town. And there's a very, very, very steep road that goes directly up. And there is a very specific rock wall that comes along the back and down the side. I didn't know it when I lived there, but I did read it when I was looking through things. And probably that's where a lot of the connection comes in, where people are always talking about the Hoosac Tunnel and the Houghton Mansion and kind of blending it together. But I feel like North Adams being so small, people often kind of lump those two horrific things together too.
Yeah, because they're so close,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that they're connected.
I also found myself, whenever I think about the Houghton Mansion, just really sad for John, because what was happened is the state police investigators in Vermont had actually had to make a ruling, obviously, because someone had died. And they had ruled that the ground was just soft and that it was not his fault. But he was just so guilt-ridden that the next morning he took his own life. And that's sad, because he was a longtime friend of theirs. I mean, he was someone who worked for them, but he was somebody who, I'm sure that weight of, they trusted him to get a job done and they didn't make it home safe.
Poor John. I feel that.
I don't know why he would be there either. I don't know why he would hang out there.
I don't think he would either.
Unless it was to hang out with Mary and Albert, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's positive experiences there too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I remember it being a place that it didn't have a lot of traction. Obviously, the Freemasons kind of did their own thing with it. But I hope that I want to say a developer had bought it whenever the Freemasons were getting rid of it. But I don't know what they're going to do with it. Hopefully, they keep it. It would make a really cool museum, or
That would be.
they already have a really new library, so they can't do it for that. But that would be cool too.
Yeah.
As long as you go in with the right intentions.
Exactly.
Thanks, Court. That was awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Do you want to do the honors of picking a card? Any card?
Sure. Okay. So we have John or Jack McGee and Geraldine Jerry McGee. On December 14th, 2011, the police responded to 7 Orchard Crossing in Andover and found 2 victims inside the home with multiple gunshot wounds. The victim's vehicle was recovered the night before on December 13th in the north end of Boston. If you have any information about this case, please call 1-855-MASS-SOLVE.
And what's the card?
Somebody help. Is that clubs or spades? 10 of clubs?
That's a club.
Club. 10 of clubs.
10 of clubs.
10 of clubs, yes. And it's 1-855-MA-SOLVE.
Did she say it wrong?
She said mass. I don't want anybody to put
I'm
an
sorry.
S and an S in there. Double S.
No masses.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
Thank you very much, Courtney.
Yeah,
Thank you.
best episode of the night.
I think so.
We definitely got through it the
fast.
fastest. Yeah.
Do you want to come back for the next 2 episodes?
Absolutely, I do.
Excellent. We'll schedule you in. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Wanderers.
Thanks, Wanderers.
Don't forget to send us a text. The link is in the show notes. If you want some merch, we've reduced the prices. We added some new colors. And don't forget to rate us and review us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen.
And also, if we get so many likes, Hannah will get a tattoo.
Yes.
And maybe she'll let you guys pick it.
Oh, God. Okay, I don't know about that.
Let's ask Mark.
Mark has tattoos. Mark will understand.
Maybe you should get a tattoo of Mark.
No.
Who's Mark?
Love you, Mark.
He's
Mark
the
is
one-
a cousin.
Oh, the cousin.
Come
duh.
on.
Whoa, Jess.
Are
You're
you-
a part of it.
Are you down for this, Hannah?
Yeah. I don't know
All right.
about them picking what it is, but absolutely.
All right,
I
so-
want to do this so bad.
So currently Hannah has no tattoos. And if we can get
Virgin body here.
If we can get 1,000 likes on either Spotify or Apple, so make sure you share with all your friends and make sure they like and subscribe. And once we hit 1,000 on either Spotify or Apple, we will take Hannah to go get a tattoo and we will record it and put it on our Facebook.
Watch me being tortured.
Yes.
Are you going to cry like a little bitch?
A Wanderers or
a tattoo
No, I
either.
like pain.
All right, so for Apple Podcast, we have 14 people that rated already. And on Spotify, there's 18. So we have plenty of room for ratings. So make sure you rate and tell all your friends to rate, because once we hit 1,000 on one of the platforms, Hannah will get a tattoo.
I think I need another drink.
Why don't we cut it right here? Thank you
right,
so
bye,
much for listening. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening today.
Wicked Wanderings is hosted by Hannah Fitzpatrick.
And me, Jess Goonan.
And it's produced by Rob Fitzpatrick.
Music by Sasha N.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave us a rating and review.
And be sure to follow us on all our socials. You can find the links down in the show notes.
And if you're looking for some wicked cozy t-shirts or hoodies, head over to our merch store.
Thank you for being a part of the Wicked Wanderings community. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Stay curious,
Keep exploring.
and always remember to keep on wandering.
Get ready to rock your style with Wicked Wanderings.
Introducing our brand new merch.
Cozy up in our Wicked hoodies.
Or flaunt your vibe in our sweet-ass t-shirt.
Join the Wicked Wanderings crew, explore the mysterious,
And head to our merch store now.
The link is in the show notes below.